Thanks for listening to the Swearing In podcast, where you'll hear the origin stories of those who chose to serve. So ground your gear, take a seat, and listen up. The Swearing In podcast starts right now.
Hello and welcome to the Swearing In podcast. I am your host, Marty Smith. Today my guest is Air Force Senior Master Sergeant retired Kevin Reed. Kevin grew up in the Los Angeles area, both in Canoga Park and Thousand Oaks. He attended Westlake High School and graduated in 1998. After a semester at Cal State Northridge, he met with an Air Force recruiter and signed a delayed enlistment contract. And in May 1999, he attended basic training at Lackland Air Force Base, Texas, as a 1 Charlie 6 space operator. He then attended Enlisted Undergraduate Space Training at Vandenberg Air Force Base, California. Kevin's first assignment was to 1st Space Operations Squadron at Schriever Air Force Base, Colorado. In May 2001, he was reassigned to Kapaun, Germany for DSP Missile Warning. He left Germany in August 2002 for assignment to the 2nd Space Operations Squadron back at Schriever Air Force Base. His next assignment was to the 2nd Space Warning Squadron at Buckley Air Force Base, Colorado. There, he was selected to the 2006 SBIRS Guardian Challenge Team. In 2008, he was reassigned to the 533rd Training Squadron as a SBIRS system instructor at Vandenberg Air Force Base. During this time, he completed his bachelor's degree in education from Liberty University. After 4 years, he was reassigned back to 2 Swiss at Buckley Air Force Base. In 2014, he took an active guard reserve position with the 8th Space Warning Squadron. In 2015, he was promoted to Master Sergeant and earned his master's degree in Space Planetary Science from American Military University. In 2018, Kevin was promoted to Senior Master Sergeant and became the Squadron Superintendent for Det 1 8 Swiss, which were later reflagged as a 4th Space Warning Squadron. He went on to be selected as a traveling instructor for the Senior NCO Leadership Course for the Air Force Reserve Command in 2019. Kevin retired from the military on June 1st, 2021. Now this concludes your pre-brief, so let's get on with the interview. Joining me today is Air Force Senior Master Sergeant retired Kevin Reed. Kevin, it's been a while since I've seen you. Thanks for coming on the podcast. I'm looking forward to your story, man.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Kevin, where did you grow up at?
So I grew up in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles area.
Really?
Yeah. In the, more like
in this a surrounding area or in
yeah.
LA?
So in the 80s, I lived in a place called Canoga Park, or the Valley, as we called it.
Yeah.
And then in the 90s, more as like when I was like as a teenager, I grew up in a place called Thousand Oaks, which is in Ventura County.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the area where I grew up. So I'm a Southern California guy. So
God, that's cool.
Love the beach.
Where'd you go to high school at?
Westlake High School. So Westlake Village is right there next to Thousand Oaks.
Oh, okay.
So I lived I didn't go to Thousand Oaks High School. I went to Westlake High School.
Is there a big difference between the two? Or?
So there is. I lived in probably the only apartment complex in Westlake Village. Okay. It's a very rich area, like a lot of stars, that kind of lawyers, doctors, and so the truck I drove my senior year, a cop pulled me over one time and he's like trying to write the ticket and he's like, "What color is this car?" And I said, "Primer." It was like this primer, grayish, bluish primer. It was primer. I didn't even have it painted. And it still said the fainted words of discount desk center of the bill. I paid $500 from some local, and so, yeah. And And
at least he didn't ask you like, hey, what landscaping job are you headed to? You know what I mean? So,
so I'm parking every day next to Mercedes, BMWs that mommy and daddy bought for these kids and stuff. So
right. I got
point
you.
being though is compared to Thousand Oaks High School, which is much more middle class. So there is a difference between Thousand Oaks High School and Westlake High School for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went there, or your parents had you go there?
So we lived in an apartment complex there, and so based on the jurisdiction, that's where I went to was Westlake. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe the education was better, and you chose that, so that's why you went over there.
No,
we had that. We had that where I grew up too. I mean, the Greeley West and Greeley Central. Greeley Central was the working class, and Greeley West was the new suburbs with the money.
Right.
So I'm with you. I got you. So what was senior Kevin Reed? What were your plans after high school then?
So I actually I graduated high school 17 years old. I didn't turn 18 until like.
Oh, you graduated early. Or was it just your birthday?
I was just the way my birthday was. And so
So you were an early to school kid? I got you.
Yeah. So, early to school kid. And so I went to college for a year before I even joined the Air Force. And I went to CSUN, or Cal State University Northridge.
Okay.
For a year. My declared major was international business. And I went there for a semester, and again, we didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
And so I got accepted, there, and I went through the first semester, and then I looked at like the bills, really looked at the bills, and here I am being a pizza deliverer, and I'm like whoo, this is I need help, and my parents didn't have money for it. And so,
I mean, good on you for getting in, but that's not, there's a lot more to it than that,
Right. Yeah. So that's when I decided at the end of that first semester to go talk to a local Air Force recruiter.
Why Air Force?
So
why military? Was it just strictly GI Bill?
It was primarily motivated by the fact that it was to get an education. Because I wanted to be the first in my family to like go and get a degree.
Okay.
And just to kind of have that box check for myself, something, go off and get a degree and have that. And but Air Force, I think I would say is because I was born at on Beale Air Force Base. And
really,
nice. Back when they still delivered babies on that base, they don't deliver. There's no hospital on base, and in fact, it's not called Beale Air Force Base. Now it's Beale Space Force Base.
Oh, they changed that name too.
Yeah, they changed that.
All right.
But yeah, my father was an SR-71 and a U-2 mechanic.
Wow. So, that is awesome.
Yeah. So he spent some time in Korea. He was, he's a black cat. And so, that's where I was born. And so I just kind of had that in my head. Like, again, so there was a desire to get education, and yet obviously there was some niche itch I wanted to scratch of like somehow serve as well,
Sure.
And so,
you didn't have you may not have had the gung ho gene, I want to wear the Green Beret or anything like that, but serve the country. Yeah. I mean, that's the way to go, especially when you're interested in education and kind of a higher order service, if you will.
I just went to the recruiter and took the ASVAB test, and then they showed me a list of jobs I qualified for.
Okay.
And I saw one that was on the list that said Space Operations, and I was like, what is that? Because people that may or may not know, but I'm like a really big Star Trek fan. Like, okay, I love specifically Next Generation, Captain Picard type stuff.
That got a whole. It was aptly named because that got a whole new generation of fans, and it was a decent series. It was really a good series. So and so when I talked to recruiter and I'm like, "What is this?" He's like, "Well, you're gonna fly satellites and stuff." And I was like, "Well, first off, I know nothing about that. Like, so." Right.
And he's like, "Oh, we'll train you. We'll teach you how to do that." And I was like, "Oh, okay, if you say so," because I know nothing about that.
What? First off, I forgot to ask, what year did you graduate?
Graduated high school in '98.
So was
This
it later
was
that year, or was it like 99? You went and talked to the recruiter.
this was December of '98. So like
Oh,
in that
geez.
semester,
Yeah.
it was at the very end of that semester in December.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in my room and I'm looking at that bill for that first semester of college, and I'm like doing the math. I'm like, I just didn't want to be in debt. So it was December, and then I just went to the local recruiter, and they were, back then you could pick your job, and so
Sure.
I qualified for space operations, and I said that's what I want, and he's like, they don't have a seat open in tech school for like 6 months. You sure you wouldn't rather be a telephone repairman?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, no, I don't want to be a telephone repairman. I want to do the satellite thing that you were talking about. And he's like, well, you got to wait 6 months. And I said, oh, wait. So I dropped out from CSUN.
Okay.
And then I went to a local community college in Moore Park.
Okay.
And knocked out another semester of just community college, some general education stuff.
Smart. Yeah, smart.
Yeah.
That's smart. I mean, did anybody prep you on that? Did anybody tell you when you go in is like, don't let them push you into something you don't want? Or was it you just had the wherewithal not to fall for his charms, if you will?
I've always been pretty good. Like, I'm kind of shy, I'm kind of quiet and introvert, and yet
that doesn't mean you're a pushover, right?
Right. I mean, I've never been accused of being a pushover. No one's ever told me that. I've always just had my own boundaries and been pretty comfortable trying to be polite, but just telling people I'm not interested.
How many people have you talked to who've gone to the military? It's like, I should have done what you did and just waited. Instead, I took security forces, or whatever they're going to push on the guys. So that is great. That's a hell of a decision. Okay, so 6 months go by. You go into MEPS, or you're already contracted in? You signed the contract?
Yeah, I'm already signed, contracted in, and all that. So I go to do another semester at community college.
Yeah.
And then I ship out, May of '99 to basic training.
Yeah. Oh, that's right when it's getting hot too.
Yeah, Kosovo and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I mean, there is stuff going on, but it is still pre, the war on terror and all that kind of stuff.
God, this is going to be interesting time-wise. So, okay, you go to basic, you go on your tech school out at Vandenberg, right?
Yep.
You remember any of your instructors?
I see their faces. If I saw them on the street, I never forget a face.
Yeah.
I forget names all the time.
Me too.
But I never forget a face.
Did you ever serve with any of them that instructed you? Space is small, right? We all circulate around.
Yeah, no, but my MTI, I saw again. I had him in my ALS.
Oh,
he was the commandant of my ALS.
Oh, okay.
Wow. And he's sitting there, and he's like, I have any of you guys as my trainees? And I'm like, I remember you.
That's wild.
Yeah.
But I suppose if you track that way, you should, that makes sense. Yeah, you're going to come back and see him again.
Right.
Then let's see. So you go out to Vandenberg for, what was it back then? EUST or?
Yeah, it was called EUST back then, or what is now called, Space 100.
Space 100, yeah.
And then back then, your EUST or Space 100 was just broad, space.
Yeah, right. It was.
And then you followed on to your very specific weapon system that you're going to be trained in.
Right.
And that was done through Area and Education Training Command at the tech school.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was slotted to go to one SOPS, the first Space Operations Squadron at Schriever. And at that time, it was kind of a hodgepodge of a lot of different missions.
Yeah, one SOPS did a bunch of it, right? They flew everybody.
Yeah, I mean, at the time they did C2, for DSP. They did launch and disposal for GPS, MSX, Taos, ACE. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that got caught, up in there. And I was trained to be a ground system operator, or GSO.
Oh, wow.
And so as a GSO, you got to touch everything.
Yeah.
Because you got to set up all the ground stuff for all those different, command links for all those. So got exposure to a lot of different, Sat C2 time, but as a GSO, yeah.
That was you got there in 99, or they push you out to 2000?
So I arrived at one SOPS at Schriever in Colorado Springs, November of 99.
Oh, so late. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And you guys had so many people too. We were always so jealous. One SOPS was always fat.
Yeah, Manning was good. We were on 8s.
I know.
I mean, people were complaining, and I was like, I didn't know any better. I'm like, this is pretty cool. I had nothing. I have no gripes or complaints from.
Well, you had no perspective of it either. You're like, well, geez, space is easy. Look at all these people. And then you go to any other squad, and you're like, we're short.
Right. Yeah.
So you get there. How long did you stay there? How long did you stay?
So I wasn't there very long.
Oh, really?
This
you're going to
Schriever
up in the mods. Right?
I'll just back up a little bit. Like,
okay,
to give you a heads up, like the first, I will say, first 13 years of service, I had 5 PCSs.
Oh yeah, well, okay.
5.
Yeah,
that's
that's
permanent change of stations. So we're talking every 2 to 3 years.
Right.
I'm moving.
Yeah.
And around. So I was only at one SOPS. I was there from November of 99, and I left May of 01.
That's a short assignment. Yeah.
A lot of my assignments are they're pretty short. They're like 1.5 2 years. Like, and I kept moving.
Why is that? I mean, usually you go 3, right?
So, my second assignment was in Germany.
Oh.
And so I went to near Ramstein Air Force Base, but it was a little air station called Vogelweh. And on Vogelweh, there's a little tiny air station called Kapaun. Yeah. Kapaun.
Right.
And that's where I did that's where we did missile warning for DSP.
Right. Was that green door technically, or?
No, it was never green door, but it was classified, back then, but I mean, it's not, yeah. But once upon a time, before everything got consolidated, that's how it was. I mean, you processed things via directly line of sight, right. Kind of like JTAGs today. It's all direct line of sight, and so via Australia, Germany, and from Denver. So I was able to go to Germany and do that. And while I was in Germany, and they needed airmen. Basically, long story short of that, why I only spent about 1.5 years in one SOPS. They needed some airmen, they needed some blood over in Germany, so they picked me and sent me.
Oh wow!
And that was supposed to be a 3-year tour, and then they shut it down because everything got consolidated in Denver, and so I only spent a year, or almost 1.5 years in Germany.
Really?
Yeah, and so it just kind of. Yeah, a lot of my first assignments, things just kept getting shut down on it. But in hindsight, I got to go to a lot of places and experience a lot of different stuff.
You got to go overseas as a 1 Charlie 6. That's a rarity.
Right.
So, were you in? So you were in Germany for the 9/11 attacks.
Yes.
What was that like overseas? I mean, I've talked to a bunch of people, and I was in during the attack, so I understand what happened here. How was it overseas? They just lock you down?
Yeah, so where I lived in, I did not have a TV that had access to local cable. I lived off base in Germany in a little village.
Oh, okay.
And the attacks for us was the afternoon, not in the morning like it was bonus, stateside. And so I get the phone call. I'm scheduled to work a night shift, but I was up at this point. But it was like 4:00-ish in the afternoon or so. I get a phone call that says, "Hey, you're on standby." I'm like, "Well, I'm already ready for a mid." And he's like, "Well, you may have to come in early." And I'm like, "What's going on?" Because I could tell the sense, the urgency in this person's voice. They're like, "Well, you don't know?" And I'm like, "No, what's going on?" They're like, "We're being attacked back home." And I'm like, what? And he's trying to explain.
That's the way he said it to you. Jeez.
Yeah, and he starts to explain it. And I think while I'm on the phone is when the Pentagon got hit. And he's watching it on TV.
So you're getting his reaction, and you have no idea.
And he's like, what the hell's going on? I'm like, what? He's like, the Pentagon's now been hit. And all of a sudden, then it's like, then all of a sudden, he's like, well, you got to get ready to come in. You're coming in for your mid anyways. And I got to back up a little bit. So
okay.
I met my wife, who I'm still married to. We've been married almost, this summer will be 24 years.
God, congratulations. Well done.
So I met her at my first assignment at 1SOPS. She was security forces as a cop. We got married, had our daughter in 2000, and we moved to Germany. So at this point in time, on 9/11, my wife is security forces. I'm both of us active duty.
Yeah.
And we have a 11-month-old daughter overseas.
Okay.
Right. And so I'm not the only one getting phone calls. My wife's getting phone calls because she's a cop.
Sure.
And they're saying, you need to report for duty. And
you're like, who's watching the kid, right?
Right. So we do at this time. We're good airmen. So I think at this point I just put on senior airman. My wife is still in A1C, but we're good airmen. So we have a family care plan, which in this case, the short term is our German babysitter in the village.
Oh, really? Okay.
She doesn't speak English, but fortunately I do, because I took some German in high school and college and stuff. So I speak German. I'm fluent in German, and but our babysitter doesn't speak English. Right. And I call her up and I say, hey, I got to drop my daughter off because of what's going on back home stateside.
Yeah.
And so on my way to work, my wife leaves to go report for duty to security forces, and then I'm dropping my 11-month-old daughter off at the German babysitter in the village.
Oh, man.
And now, for the first time, walking into a foreigner's living room, I'm now finally seeing on a TV what's happened back home stateside.
I see. Yeah.
And I'm
your jaw
had
to drop, right? You're
dude,
like,
I'm just standing there,
whoa.
and nothing else for a moment. Nothing else exists. And I'm just like staring at the screen, and it's like surreal. Like, you can't imagine, like, am I really seeing what I'm seeing?
Yeah, right.
And then I realize the German family, they're not looking at the TV. They're all looking at me. They're staring at me.
Yeah.
And they're like, what is this guy going to do? Like they're awestruck as well. Like, not only is this happening to Americans one up, but there's an American in our living room now. Military highlight.
Yeah, sure.
And yet here I am saying, can you take care of my daughter? And I don't know when I'm going to be back.
Wow, that's wild.
That's
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And the next month we didn't get it. Oh, well, I got some days off. My wife worked 30 days straight, no days off, 12-hour shifts. Wow. Security forces. Because they went to, well, you think about it, we went to...
Yeah, they changed Epicons or whatever.
Yeah, well, and initially we went to DEFCON 3, right?
No, yeah, sure. Yeah, right,
and we were in FBCon Delta.
Yeah.
So my wife's sitting there, and so by the time I get to work, I'm driving on base, I see my wife on the top of a Humvee with an M60 and a helmet aimed at the gate, who she tells me later that she was like, anyone runs the gate, you light them up.
Yeah, I guess so at that point, right?
Yeah. At that moment, on that day, on that day, it was like, anyone runs the gate, you light them up.
Wow,
and
amazing.
Our daughter, she basically lived with a foreigner, a German babysitter for like a couple weeks.
Wow. While
I would come home and I would get her and I'd sleep, but then I'd bring her right back and whatnot. And it was just,
oh, amazing lady. Yeah. I mean, to accommodate that, to do that.
Right.
Wow. That's a hell of a story. That is amazing. Geez. So, I don't know how you come out of that, but we'll just come out of that. I mean, it's, things soften and you kind of get to a steady state there. I don't know what they did overseas, but forevermore now we got gate guards.
To try to soften and come out of it, they started saying things like, well, we're going to come up with some additional measures. We're going to try to fool the terrorists. When you come to work now, if you live off base, we're civilian clothes.
Oh, that'll do it.
And I was like, I drive a Chevy S10 pickup, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the next month on Halloween,
Yeah.
which, mind you, the Germans don't celebrate. I mean, they might do it now, but back then they really didn't.
Right.
But they know Americans do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Halloween comes around. We don't have any candy because we're in Germany. They don't celebrate Halloween. A knock comes to the door. I open it, and these little German kids are saying trick or treat, and I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, you don't do Halloween?" And they're like, "Yeah, but," and they point out my truck in the driveway, and they're like, "But you American?"
Yeah, they pick it. It's easy to pick you out, right? Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if these little German kids can figure it out, pretty sure terrorists are going to be able to figure it out. But we're going to trick them because I'm going to wear civilian clothes as I drive into work.
That's right. They'll never figure that out. It'll throw them.
Yeah.
I do remember measures like that. Alter your route, that kind of thing, and yes, the civilian clothes. That's it. What a crazy time! What a crazy time.
Yeah.
But you only stayed there. How long did you stay there after that? So 2002 you left, or
yeah,
did you stretch into 2000?
We came back around July, August of 2002.
Okay. And where'd you go?
So I went back to Schriever because that's what everybody does. Everyone gets sucked back to Schriever.
Yeah, that's true.
And I, for the first and only time, stepped outside of the DSP SBIRS for my entire career, because I did DSP SBIRS like my entire career.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah. Sure.
Except from like August of 2002 until January of 2005, I was GPS at two stops.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Which turned out to be fortuitous because guess what happens? What happened in March of 2003? We got
go ahead.
we got the war in Iraq.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And so all of a sudden now I'm part of like GPS participating in shock and awe with our GPS navigated, missiles and everything, participating in that. And
that's true.
So we were getting phone calls. They basically want us to continuously update, and have the best possible, navigation signal. So we were very busy, constantly doing nav uploads. For that.
I remember. I worked briefly on the floor of GPS for I don't know, a year and a half or something when I was with 19 stops. So, I can only imagine, all the what were they, PSOs back then, just like running constantly, do it again, and it's just like but that was on the old GPSs, right? That wasn't on the new stuff.
Yeah, so that was with back then we had blocks 2A and some new 2R.
Oh, really?
Which is like old now, obviously. Yeah. I don't even know if they have any 2Rs left,
I remember that. Wasn't that training suite down in the basement or whatever it was?
So the training, that's so funny called the training suite because
I know, but for lack of whatever else to call it.
What it was, it was a room. And this training suite back in 2002 was essentially printed off paper, and they would slide in front of you, one for your left screen and one for your right screen. Screenshots of things flagging out and whatnot. And they say, okay, well, now you see this. And they put a sheet in front of you and say, now you see this. What do you do? It's like, okay, all right. It was the most, I'll just say it, shitty, freaking crappy for GPS. We're talking about the global positioning system. Right. This is our training system was paper.
That's nuts. Yeah, that's crazy. And then you could give that a contrast to SBIRS,
right? Where
the training suite has got to mirror the exact floor system.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, how are we doing it? How are we getting away with it in GPS? And I'm like, GPS.
Yeah, just mind blowing. Like we were talking about the premier world example of like a global positioning system, satellite system, and how do we train the people to use it with paper, with screen prints.
Now, no offense, there was somebody came up with that idea, right? Because they had nothing else. We'll just do it this way then.
That's the way we are in the military. We just adapt, and we were like, well, we got to do something.
Right. That's crazy. That's funny.
Yeah.
So you stayed, or what'd you say, 2005? You stayed with GPS?
Yes. So I left there, January of 2005, and then I went to Buckley for the first time to Swiss.
So, all right. Yeah. And that's where we met, somewhere in there. Yeah.
It was about basically spring of 2005.
Yeah. Spring of 2005. And were put on the system side, obviously.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had at
Did
that
you have
point,
to go to Vandenberg before you came to Buckley?
I did. They sent me. So, what was this? This would have been fall of 04. They sent me back to Vandenberg.
Wow. Yeah.
And I did. I went through SSO training out there at Vandenberg.
SSO fundamentals or whatever it was called back then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the worst thing about AETC was that every time you changed assignments in space, if you changed systems, you had to go back and do their time.
But
right?
yeah, but man, the training was really good back then.
Yeah, that's true. Because they had
quality of the training.
Their system was the system you got on the floor, which was painstakingly done. But I think it paid dividends. You know, I think it really paid off because when we were getting new people in on the floor, you're like, oh shit, good. You already know this. Good.
Yeah.
You know, there was there was not a large delta that you had to do for at unit training or OJT or whatever the term was back then.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. I mean, you had to learn locals, which blows my mind because I was talking to Jake the other day, Jake Wall. And I was like, we should do a bit on locals. And he goes, they don't do locals anymore. And I was like, what?
They don't.
How do they not do it? Because they get rid of that.
If you handed somebody now a Guardian or something like a fire extinguisher.
Yeah. What for that weekly show we did, and Jake and I ran through some names, right? Space names for that weekly podcast we did. Mm-hmm. And my first name was like, I want to call it Fire in the Break Room because everybody will know that and they'll chuckle at it. And that's where Jake goes, they don't do locals anymore. Nobody will know it. And I was like, what? Because that's when you knew the eval was over. When they gave you a Fire in the Break Room, you're like, great, I'm done.
Please, come on, total evac.
I know, total evac. Now we got a whole force that doesn't know what a Fire in the Break Room is. That's too bad. What a shame. So, okay, back out of Vandenberg for the second time, right?
Yeah.
Or the third time. Did you have to go before you went to Kapaun?
No. So actually, no, I didn't. I went straight to Germany.
Oh, nice.
And they taught me on site there.
Nice. So. Nice. Was it a bitch to try to get all joint spouse stuff? Remember that whole coordination? Was that just pulling? I mean, you know, back then pulling your hair out, but you know that can tend to be a pain in the ass, right?
Historically and tradition, I mean, it is. But I, as a space operator, can't go many places.
True.
And my wife, as a cop, can go anywhere.
Yeah, she can go anywhere, right?
I kind of pulled her around. I mean, it really was my career was what pulled us from, you know, to Germany, back to, you know, back down to Schriever and whatnot. Yeah. And so each time I got orders, they just said, well, you're a cop. And like, well, you just follow him along. And
yeah, you're going to see all the lovely space bases. So, okay. What did you think of Buckley, which is amazing? Now it's right. Your fourth assignment. No, one, two, three, fourth assignment.
So at this point, it's my fourth assignment. I'm a staff sergeant, a pretty new staff sergeant. You know,
where'd you get promoted at?
That was at Schriever in 03. I was in their OGV at the time, so I was two stops, but then I went up to OGV. So I was, but it was like summer of 03. Okay. I made staff the first time, and I pissed my wife off because my wife was a far better airman than me.
Really? Oh, yeah.
I mean, I wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But like my wife was squared away.
She actually put some effort into it.
And she put effort and she studied. And I did not study, and I made it. Oh. But we're going against different, you know, I was testing different fields. It's different, right? You know, and it's different percentages and stuff like that. And so I made it, and she was
that wasn't the big staff sergeant giveaway, was it?
Well, there were every year was staff sergeant giveaway back then. But I would say, I mean, it was, you know, 2003. I consider it a staff sergeant giveaway. I mean, it was like 60% promotion.
Well, but you're also
anyone who didn't get it. You know,
yeah, that's true. That's true. You know? But you're also in a critical AFSC, right? So you know that kind of helps.
No, so it was a great staff sergeant giveaway, but me going to Buckley almost didn't happen. So I almost got out.
How come?
at that time because you had to. I signed up for 6 years. My 6 years was up.
I got you. Yeah.
And I didn't have a CGAR like that, which was that ability to, the authorization for you to reenlist.
Right.
And at this point in time in 2005, they were cutting forces back. I mean, the war was going on, but they were also trying to cut back. The whole do more with less, Rumsfeld era, and that kind of stuff. And so they were. I didn't have the authority to reenlist, and so I was about to become Mr. Reed, like for real, like about a month out from becoming Mr. Reed.
That's wild.
And at the last second, I get a phone call from like the wing command chief or something. He's like, "Hey, are you interested in going to Buckley?" And it came with an upgrading clearance.
Oh yeah.
So at that point, I only had a secret clearance.
Yeah.
Our career field didn't have, TSSCR, and it was just secret. And they said, "Well, we'll upgrade you. You're going to get upgraded to a TSSCI if you go up there." And I'm like, I'll be honest. At that point, I was like, "Well, should be worth more on the outside."
Yeah.
That's
true. Yeah, right.
So I went ahead and was able to reenlist. Like, I mean, I was so close to walking out. I was ready, to leave, and the last second, I told my wife, like, "Hey, I got this opportunity to go to Buckley. I'm going to re-enlist, and we're going to Denver." And I feel bad, but I mean, I did this to my wife like for 22 years of just dragging her because at this point she's out. And when she got out, I'm like, "What do you want to do now?" She's like, "I want babies." And so that's why we have 6 kids.
Look at that.
And so she just started like, we just, so at this point we've got, I think at that point we had 3 kids, and now I'm dragging them up to Denver.
And she just wants to be home taking care of the kids.
Yeah, at this point she's kind of like, okay, we did the Air Force thing, but
that's so great. Yeah.
But I'm starting. This is when I start to kind of drag her around. I'm really, because now it's like,
I mean, she's probably got a bigger job than she did when she was in.
Well, it's all babysitting somehow. Babysitting is
it is, but it's also taking care of them while you're on shift and taking care of the house and all the other nitnoid stuff while you're working. So, I mean, that they just had wasn't it spouse month or something like that? They just had spouse recognition. So, okay. So now you're staff. Did you do anything fancy for your NCO promotion there?
I don't think so.
How about for you?
I don't. I mean, they were there, they were present, but it wasn't anything back then. There were no ceremonies or anything like that at that level or anything like that. It was kind of like over a lunch break type thing, high five.
I got you. I've gotten ranked like that before too, and they're like, "Hey, we didn't have a ceremony, but here it is. You can pin it on now." Yeah. So did they extend you, or did you sign a new contract? Were you able to re-up with this assignment, or did they extend you so you could take the assignment?
I'm pretty sure it was a reenlistment. So now I'm on my second term.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those guys. I never got any reenlistment bonuses, but
no, right. I mean, you never do.
I always missed that somehow, but
because you didn't retrain. If you were retrained, that's where all the money was. Right? Not if you stayed in the career field. Yeah. And I'm like, I thought we were critically manned. Shouldn't you guys be paying me more to stay in this career field? But it never worked that way, like you said. Yeah. So what did you think of Buckley?
It was cool. It was a bigger ops floor. To see everything consolidated. I mean, GPS ops floor was cool. And that was a cool mission.
Right, but GPS is a corner of the SBIRS ops floor, right?
Yeah. So now I'm on a big ops floor. I'm one cell of many. Several cells,
cool.
And just a lot of fun, knowledgeable people that just were so smart on the system and just the bigger picture of missile warning, but also just love to have fun, and stuff.
It was during the 2000s, I think, and I've said this before, that Buckley, 2 Swiss, SBIRS, 8 Swiss, it was so eclectic and you sprinkle in the 4 nationals there, and you got 4 different mission sets essentially with intel, mission, system, satellite system, ground system. Oh, it's a crazy mix of people that we jammed all in that one ops floor. Made for some great stories, made for some, just
Some infamous
ridiculous
stories.
things. Yes.
But in 2006, I got selected for Guardian Challenge, and I was on the Guardian Challenge team.
Oh, nice.
And I mentioned that because that's another example of like work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
Was
that the Guardian Challenge team that Colonel Ayers went out on with you guys?
I was in 06. I think Ayers might have been 07.
Oh, okay.
But
I wasn't sure when it was.
That Colonel Ayers, man, that's a bad word for.
It wasn't back then at the time.
Well, I've got. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to bring it up in this thing, but yeah.
I hear you. We could talk offline too. So.
Gosh, man, but that Guardian Challenge thing was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And they don't do that anymore. And it's like,
oh, they don't. They stopped that too.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they stopped doing that. And talk about like the level of camaraderie of like just really sweating your butt off to know your craft, where they intentionally throw everything at you to beyond the breaking point. Like it's not even feasible.
Well, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I got to shut my mouth, but I like the fact, to emphasize what you're saying, is that it made everyone else who were trying to get on that team better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you go into the eval and you're just like, geez, this eval is ridiculous. But you became better just to try to compete to be on that team. So, for you to make it, that's a tip of the cap, man.
Yeah, when I got there in 05 and I saw the team come together and I saw the caliber of the people that were on it, I'm like, yeah, those are the best operators. They're really good.
Yeah.
And so in 06, when I was able to compete and make it and then go and represent SBIRS and then go and compete against all the other units across the command, the Space Command.
Who was your GSO and who was your system crew chief? You remember?
GSO was Ivan Plata.
Oh, yeah, Plata. Oh, very good. Yeah.
My crew chief was Rob Cherry.
Oh, was he really?
So
yeah,
it was. I mean, Rob Cherry, Ivan Plata. I mean, they were just so good at what they did. I felt like I was the weak link, but I did my part, and those guys are just so much fun.
That guy always looked up to guys like that who could be that technically proficient and drink that much. I mean, it was amazing.
And that's the thing. Then there's the party, the Guardian Challenge party, and then you go and you compete. But you go and you compete against other, and then you got to go and hang out with all the best of the other units and stuff, and there's just nothing like that now. That level of
I didn't realize
base-wide camaraderie, pride of your system.
Yeah,
and just like I would be awesome. I really do hope they can eventually bring something like that back to this, to the Space Force or something like that.
Well, and that's I remember those years too. I remember when they used to track, and this was early. This might have been before you got there, but they used to track your error-free hours because we were having so many errors, right? But they would track your error-free hours, and then for a period of time, or they would issue you 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 error-free pins, and you could wear those on your name tag. And you talk about strutting a little bigger, when you got that, and you're like, shit, I'm doing well, and I'm going to study hard because I don't want to lose this thing, right? I'm going to be much better at my job. And then they came out and they're like, hey, take those off. They're not authorized. And you're like, you just killed it, right? You just killed that motivation thing, just like they just killed it with Guardian Challenge. So, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think from that, another one of my favorite moments, at least mission-wise, was doing a true real-world collision avoidance. That, according to Mac, who's still there, the SSE Mac, he says that is to this day, the no shit closest collision avoidance was back in.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was it was to avoid, a derelict Russian satellite.
Yeah.
But we didn't know that at first. And we were just waiting. We had the right of way in our box of where we were supposed to keep our satellite, and their satellite's cruising into our parking spot. Wow. And we're waiting for them to move it and take care of it. And finally the Russians were like, not our problem. Derelict satellite, no gas. You move satellite. And so when we realized, like, oh shit, like it has no gas. Like we need to move.
Yeah, you have no choice.
The engineers were standing behind me and handwritten the command plan and the numbers, and then slapped it on the table in front of me as an SSO and said, "Run these commands."
Yeah.
Now, like,
wow.
And it's the only time I've ever seen the S or the special command plan done with like ink. Look with the engineers.
Right there.
Right there, real time. Yeah.
Wow, that's some puckered what's at that point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's pretty good. And you got to execute that. That's awesome. That's a feather in your cap.
Yeah.
So when did how long did you stay How long did you stay on the floor? I'm sure that I know they pulled you up into
after that event, after that collision avoidance event, and then Guardian Challenge, they pulled me to the training. They pulled me to the training shop.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I was only on the floor, like a year, 18 months or so. They pulled me to OSS.
That's about right.
Operational Support Squadron, and then so I'm an instructor there.
Right.
And that was so much fun. I mean, if I had to pick one group of people out of my entire career that was just the most fun, the most smart, cool, it was Derek Lucas as our flight chief there in the training shop. And those guys, all the people in that flight, just so much fun. Yeah. I mean, it was just the best.
We always envied old DOT or DO. Well, OGV, OGT, or what OSOT, whatever it was. So, you guys always had the best time. But you earned it. You earned it going up there, and that's what was what was cool. So, what did you do after Buckley?
So I went to AETC. I went back to Vandenberg.
Oh, you went instructor out there?
Became an instructor for SBIRS. And so at this point, how they did it was system side. So it was training all of TT&C and ground.
Oh, they had combined it at that time?
At that point, it was combined. But when the lessons came up, like I primarily taught like more of the TT&C SSO side.
Right.
But
students were getting both, right?
Students were getting both at that point. You were exposed to both. And then when they got out to Buckley, they were able to kind of decide and based on see how your aptitude and say, okay, we're going to push you this way or that way.
I remember that shift. And it's also like, hey, we're short SSO, so you're going over there.
Right.
How was Vandenberg? What did you think of Vandenberg?
So
when did you get out to Vandenberg then?
So got to Vandenberg summer of 08.
Oh, 08. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, we were there summer of 08 till December of 12.
Wow, good long tour finally.
Yeah, so it was like 4.5 years, about 4 years. So that at that point, that was our longest assignment was there.
Yeah.
But as strictly from my family, because we lived on base housing, and this was base housing for the first time. And it was just, I loved it. As far as an assignment, Germany was awesome. Germany was freaking cool to be overseas and doing all that. But from now a family at this point, we've got, we had 4 and then our 5th kid out there. So we got more kids. We're more family focused, but just a really great environment for family. I lived close enough to my work to where I rode a bicycle to work every day.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Just so
you're not doing mid shifts, you know.
Monday through Friday, holidays off. Weather's great year round.
Yeah.
Weather's great year round. Riding bicycles to work.
Geez, how old's your daughter? Your first daughter, right? Your first kid was a daughter.
Well, right now she's 23.
No. I mean, at that time, was she like 10?
So at this point, she's,
or maybe not 10.
So at this point, she's basically 8 when we get there, and then when we leave, she's 12. My oldest.
Yeah. Wow, that's wild.
But yeah, Vandenberg was just a very chill, laid back, rejuvenating experience. And even AETC was, everyone talks bad, would talk, gripe about AETC, but I really just enjoyed the whole instructing and teaching and academic environment of the schoolhouse out there. I was really sad when I heard that it is a mere shadow of what it was in its days back then.
Really?
No kidding. Yeah.
We're not even that old, and we're acting like old.
Although they do that now. So I say that, but I mean, now they picked up their own basic training, and they do have their own.
Oh, they did.
Well,
Huh.
I mean, it's Space Force. I mean, they've got their own,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So they picked it up on that end, but on the tech school side, I mean, it's just not the same. Yeah, but
You make tech sergeant out there?
I did. So I finally, I was a staff sergeant for like 7 years, but I never studied. Because my again, what brought
Did your
me
wife
into the
yell at
service-
you even though she wasn't in anymore? She's like, God bless it. Would you do something?
Yeah. Again, my whole purpose of going the military was education initially, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're in active duty, they pay 100% tuition assistance. And
Right,
so
right.
my focus was, you know what? I want to focus on my degree. And
Oh,
so
I see. I got you. Yeah.
it wasn't until I finished my bachelor's degree that I then said, okay, now I'll focus on my staff, studying for tech sergeant E6.
Yeah.
And when I finally studied once, I blew it out of the water. I dominated. I had way more points than I need because all it took was cracking open the book a little bit.
Yeah. Right. Right. What'd you get your degree in?
Essential education, social science. So
Okay.
it was kind of a hodgepodge. It was essentially a history degree, but then I went to AETC, and then I picked up a bunch of education, and so it just became like an education social science.
Where's your degree from then?
Liberty. So my bachelor's
Liberty,
was through Liberty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Did you do any special for your E7? I mean, your E6?
No, that was another lunchtime ceremony. Brought the family out to lunch. That had some sandwiches on the table or something like that. It was in the conference room. It was a real. It really wasn't until later on in the reserve that I started seeing some serious promotion ceremonies.
Well, your next, I'm getting ready for your next one because your next one's in the E7, right? So
Yeah.
you're a senior NCL, so you
Yeah.
better blow me away with a good story on that one. So, 2012, you having any say in your next assignment?
So I kind of pissed off. So at this point, I'm at so I spent the first 2 years out there in the 533rd as an instructor.
Okay.
And then the next 2.5 years, from like 2010 to 2012, I'm now at the group level out there, and I am in charge of all training evaluation on campus. I mean, 533rd, 392nd, 532nd.
Wow.
And this is also the time frame when the whole basic training fallout happens with you had all the the rape and stuff that was going on at Air Force basic training, and the TIs are going to prison and all that kind of stuff.
Really?
And so they do a complete shakedown, and they want to know what has this been happening in any of the tech schools.
Wow.
And so I have to go back, and here it is, like 2011 timeframe, and I got to go back all the way for like 3 or 4 years and so I had to read every single end of course critique and feedback and all of it, looking for any kind of sign that a student had made a comment of like they were under duress or something that happened to them.
Yeah.
So if you're any
anybody
listening had been a student during that time, I've read their feedback, but that was my job. Was I evaluated instructors, I evaluated curriculum and all that, and so that's kind of an important piece of what that I did out there was taking care of all the training evaluation.
Right. Golly.
So because I work for the group commander, I don't really. I took care of my own next assignment.
That's nice.
So Jay Harris, I love Jay Harris, but he was the squadron superintendent of the 533rd, and normally you would go through your senior enlisted leader to kind of help work your next assignment at this point.
Yeah,
I took care of it myself, and I started calling squadron soups.
Sometimes that's easier.
And then Jay Harris calls me up. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I'm taking care of myself, man. I'm going to make sure I'm going somewhere I want to go.
Sure. Right.
And so I was I got pulled back basically to Swiss, but it was kind of a wanted. My wife was interested in going back, we liked the Denver area.
Yeah.
And so we went back to Buckley. We went back to Swiss. And so that's how, so that was December of 12 is when we go back to Denver.
Oh, not too bad. Yeah, not too bad. How long did you stay this time?
So that's my last PCS.
Oh, now you're doing the PCA game, huh?
Right. And so so at this point in 2013, they were doing another drawdown of forces. And so this is the second time now. I'm coming up to the end of my second 6-year enlistment. And
that's right.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to reenlist, and
again.
Right. This is the second time in my career now. I'm saying like, and the squadron commanders, Colonel Roy of 2 Swiss at the time was told, rack and stack your tech, specifically tech sergeants. So specifically E6s, they're getting rid of a bunch of E6s. And Colonel Roy was told, rack and stack your tech sergeants. And we don't know how many of them you're going to be able to keep.
Yeah. Oh,
and so now I'm fretting. I'm like, I got to find a job, whatnot. And this is when Jessica Swick comes to me.
Oh,
she's the squadron superintendent of 8 Swiss, the reserve associate unit to 2 Swiss.
Yeah.
She comes to me. She goes, "Hey, I hear all this going on with the tech sergeants and whatnot. Like, are you interested in coming over to 8 Swiss to be a reservist?" And I was like, And she goes, "What about AGR?" I'm like, "I don't even know what that means. What's AGR?" I knew nothing about it.
Right.
And she starts explaining, and I hear wah 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 wah, and then I hear her say, "You don't have to PCS
That's right.
unless you want to."
That's right.
And I'm like, "What did you just say? Like, you get to choose?" What?
It's a great deal.
And so I was like, that was at least worth applying. So I applied to be an AGR.
Yeah.
E6 lateral move. At this point, I can retire as a tech. I don't care. I just want to stop moving my family around.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, so at this point, I've got like 14 years in. I can just coast and just be done for the next 6 years and be done. If Colonel Roy, my squadron commander, pulls me into his office and says, "Okay, I got 2 sheets here. I got one here saying this is your application to go to ASWIS to be an AGR." And he said, "I've signed it. I've also got this paper over here that shows my list of E6s that have been racked and stacked." He's like, "You're my number 1 E6.
Okay.
He's like, "I don't really want to lose you. In fact, you would be the last E6 I would give up." He's like,
nice. That's
so
that's got to make you feel good.
It did. I was like, man, like, how often do you get an opportunity like to be told that? And like, I'm sitting in his commander's office, and he's like, "So what do you want to do?" And I'm like, "Well, to be honest, I mean, I appreciate, you pick me as me as your number 1 E6, but I got to think about my family. I don't want to make them move around anymore. I think I really want to take this AGR gig." And he smiled and he said, I understand that, and I respect that. And he's like, "And I think that's a good choice, and I support that." And so he signed it and he gave it to me, and that's when I went over to 8 Swiss and became a active duty reservist.
That's wonderful that you were able to step right into that job. So because that's a timing piece too. Right?
Yeah,
to be available. Right?
Timing was really good. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. So okay, now it makes sense. Now you're not juggling PCAs anymore. You're an E6 AGR full-time gig. Where'd they put you? That's a big question, right? Because I don't know.
Oh,
during my time in the 8 Swiss, all the AGRs, they were either on the floor or they were in the shops, right? But then as I understood it, they pulled them back.
And I was part of that.
Oh, really?
So I'll explain that. So I'm an E6 AGR in 8 Swiss. What do they do with me? The timing had it that they no longer were going to be training the technical school side at AATC. They were pulling that to the home units.
Okay.
So there was no more AATC learning how to learn your weapon system.
Yeah.
It was all going to be done
on site.
On site.
Right.
And so they quickly said, who has AAT experience that can take that on? And I was one of them. And so people like Juan Lopez had it and whatnot. Anybody who had AATC stink on them, formal training, we went to the training shop.
Well, because you're turning it into AATC.
Yeah, that's essentially what we did. Yeah. We tried to take the best of AATC, the parts that made sense, and stand all that up and to create it in-house. So we were the ones that stood that up in like 2014, 2015 timeframe, to what it is, today, like where would they train in-house.
Was it still, were you still answering to like 21st Space Wing for inspections or anything like that? Or had they hands off by that time? I don't.
At that point, they were hands off. They were 21st Space Wing was hands off. At this point, it's the 460th.
Wow.
And
That's
at this point, even AATC's not in our chili because it's just all us. And it was kind of a weird moment of like sitting here, like being like, what do we keep and not keep?
That's that's remarkable. Yeah, that's remarkable.
And yet, what do we keep? And I try to instill what do we keep? And of course, the military is always interested in doing more with less, cutting corners and that kind of stuff. And to where I tried to keep up some AATC standards, and they said, well, that sounds like that takes bodies. And I'm like, well, yeah. And they're like, well, we don't got it.
Yeah,
so that kind of stuff starts going away.
Did they throw at you? It's like, hey, don't worry about that. We're not going to get inspected anymore. So we can do what we want.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that sounds dangerous, kind of actually.
Yeah. But I alluded to so the AGRs were embedded in the back offices to help do the training. But unfortunately, so again, doing more with less, we were just very stressed, a lot of work. And there was a suicide, and it just devastates the team. I mean, it was just like people were just
within the office, or
not the office. It was individual was on crew, but just everybody knew him. Everybody knew him. It's such a close community, and the airmen and that the other instructors and stuff were just understandably so, just really struggling. I mean, and down to like where you're supposed to, and then that and the manning was bad to where normally, like I try to keep us to have instructor to student ratios from AATC, which for a good reason, where typically you had like 3 students to every 1 instructor when you're doing performance. No, it was 1 instructor for like 15 students for performance-based training.
Wow.
Okay, 1. And my instructors were just literally walking out of the classroom and checking themselves into mental health.
It was that bad.
And AGRs. Some of these were AGRs, and I went to the training lead, the officer in charge of training, active duty side, and I said, "This is what's going on." And that individual said, "Oh, well, this sounds like good stress." That's a quote. And I said, at this moment, I'm pulling all AGRs out of the training shop. Now, I said that without the authority to do that.
That sounds decisive, though. I like it.
But I said it. I meant it, and I said it decisive. And I turned around, and when I left, I went straight to Jessica Swick's office, and I said, "This is what I just did."
Oh shit!
And she said, "I support it."
Oh,
she goes, "I'll back that."
That's great.
And everything, and she backed it, and we did. We pulled all the AGRs back, and it took almost 3 years before we slowly started to reintegrate AGRs back into the shop skin to help that out, because in my opinion, they just weren't being used well. They were being,
So that's why during that time frame that they were hiring civilian contractors to come in to a training shop, right?
Yep. And so that you're right.
Schmidt was involved with all that. Yeah.
So and so because the manning was so bad, they started hiring as a way of fixing it. Hiring some civilian instructors.
Wow. I didn't know. I never knew what the whole backstory of all that was.
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay. Now what? Now what are you doing? Are you augmenting or what?
Yeah. So because I'm now no longer in the training shop, I do get promoted to master.
Oh, congrats! Did you take an AGR E7 spot or did you take an E6 spot?
So I initially came in as an E6 AGR slot, and then I applied for and got a Master Sergeant AGR slot.
What was the dates that you came in the reserves? What was the date you got promoted to Master?
August of 14, I came into the reserve as an E6.
All right.
And then I got Master Sergeant AGR a year later. So that would have been like summer, fall of 15.
Nice. Very good. Yeah.
And so but now come 2016, like there's no, we're not in the training shop, you know. So I got to think of like, well, how do I stay gainfully employed? And so I do get, I'm now a flight chief of Alpha Flight, you know, in ASWIS.
Yeah.
I go through AOM or Advanced Orbital Mechanics training, and I'm also helping supplement the OA shop, the Orbital Analysis shop.
Okay. All right.
So I do all that in 2016, and then we didn't have like a full-time diamond in our squadron. So
no, huh?
Yeah. So
that's always tough because that's like a TR position, I think, right?
It is. Yeah, it was TR. So we didn't have a full-time first sergeant or diamond. So we had to rely on additional duty first sergeants. Right. So I pick up and I do additional duty first sergeant on top of all that for 18 months.
That's enough to keep you busy. That's for sure.
Yeah. So like that's 2017 is like, for me personally, doing all that career-wise is looking awesome. You know, I'm a flight chief. I'm doing orbital analysis work, which is just amazing. I mean, that's so cool to be able to do that. And then, which, mind you, the military doesn't do now. That's all contractor. Now I'm a contractor, and that's good for us, but I think that's kind of they're
taking the military out of all that? Wow.
Yeah, it's really bad. But yeah, I'm doing OA work. I'm doing first sergeant work. So
you've got all the boxes checked, right?
I've got a lot of these boxes checked, you know, for career progression.
Should be looking pretty good for a superintendent job here coming up.
Well, then I start hitting the politics. So I'm being told, well, you got to move, you got to go and apply. So I'm applying for superintendent gigs down in the spring, Colorado Springs, at Schriever, at Peterson, and whatnot. And I'm getting turned down, and I've been told, I love her. She's actually a great friend, and we were airmen together. But Kim McAuliffe, she tells me, it's not your turn. And I'm like, oh, so that's how that works. There's a pecking order. There's a, you know, and now I'm kind of, my eyes are being open to the politics, and, you know,
that lousy taste you got in your mouth.
I was like, okay, so this isn't based on merit. This is based on who you know and the pecking order and the you know, waiting your turn and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay. But on a personal level, like, it's like my life. I mean, I've got 6 kids and a wife, and I'm so busy.
Yeah, you're not.
I'm trying to. I'm working on my master's degree. You know, I finished I complete my graduate degree, and stuff. So I'm just super busy. Go. Yeah. Professional development, the Air Force. In one sense, it is so awesome and great that they push you to find your potential, like, and reach for it and get it. But it's like extremely stressful. I mean, you know, and to try to have a family, which of course the military didn't issue a family, but you get one.
No, but right.
Yeah.
At the same time, you are a reserve AGR, of course, which means we kind of forgot the reserve part of it. You know what I mean? And you don't get to enjoy your family as much as you would. But yeah, I'm with you. I got you.
Yeah.
Did you stay with 8 Swiss that whole time, or did you go over to who was the other one they brought up there? 4 Swiss? Is that
so I was with 8 Swiss from 2014 until 2018. So for 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Because I apply for a squadron superintendent position with Det 1 8 Swiss.
Oh.
Which eventually becomes 4 Swiss.
Oh, they did. That's what happened. Okay. So they just reflagged. Yeah.
I apply and get it, and I become a squadron superintendent of Det 1 8 Swiss, which becomes redesignated as the 4th Space Warning Squadron.
Were you the first 4th Space? Were you the first 4 Swiss superintendent?
No, only because it was brought back to life. So there had been previously a 4 Swiss unit down in New Mexico.
Yeah, they were counter space, weren't they, or something like that?
Like back in the 90s or whatever it was. It was a long time ago, but it had been deactivated, and then the name had been we had been reactivated and renamed designated 4 Swiss. So there, at some point, there had been a Force Swiss superintendent down in New Mexico.
But that doesn't count. At Buckley, you were the
Right.
first.
I was the
you were
first one at
superintendent.
Buckley. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
So that was like summer, fall of 2018.
Is that around the time of the whole SMF experiment? And
so that was going on. Yes. So the Space Mission Forces. Yeah, that was going on, experiment at that time. Yep.
I saw that from afar and I was like, I don't think this is going to work.
It proved, I mean, it's like many things. It looks really good on paper.
Oh, it briefs well. It briefs fantastic, right?
But you got humans.
But the execution of it is
like, execution. I mean, specifically, it was the whole idea was, you're supposed to spend X amount of months doing the mission as if you were deployed,
right,
and then X amount of months back in garrison, training up or going on vacation, leave or whatever. And the problem was when they were in garrison, the downtime, there was no advanced training of whatnot that was going on. Right. So.
And that was a big selling point.
Just a complete waste of manpower. They'll
get so much better when they're not on the floor because they'll be freed up to do all this weapons officer stuff.
Right.
And you're like, no, they're barely pulling shields.
Yeah. But as long as you say the word innovation, that sounds provocative and cool, and it sounds like you're doing something new. Yeah. Just say innovation, and people are like,
I've been a SBIRS long enough. They try to model it. They try to do the square peg in a round hole. Let's follow the air guys, how they do it. Let's follow the deployment guys, how they do it. And it's like, it's SBIRS. It's not, you can call it what you want and you can try whatever you want. But it's still just SBIRS pulling shifts, and that's, so I give people props for trying to do it, but somebody should have said, hey, won't this happen? This may not be the best thing for us. So anyway,
so I picked that up in like late 18, and so now it's 2019, and
did you get promoted right when you get put in?
Yeah, so I was I put on senior master sergeant November of 18.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Yeah, but now I'm not participating in the politics, what we call down south, down in Colorado Springs. But I'm now seeing at the same time, I'm looking at the people and I'm the pecking order of waiting your turn and whatnot. And the writing's on the wall of, well, I can get chief. I mean, it's like the timing wise, it's like right there. And so I'm like, if I just check a few more boxes, it's like right there. Right. I'm starting to get into that mode, that mindset of like, oh man, it's like right within reach. And so I go and compete to be a traveling instructor for the senior NCO leadership course for AFRIC. So I go out to Robbins and I compete. And I'll be honest, I did ATC. I've done a lot. This was tough.
Really?
And it was like being on American Idol or something. It was like way more. It was beyond what it should have been, but it was extremely tough. And I got it. I got selected to be one of these guys that travels around Air Force Reserve Command and teach this weekend seminar to senior NCOs as a leadership course, as kind of like a hedgeway between, before they go to PME, their senior NCO academy or something. And so I'm doing this on top of being a squadron superintendent.
How are you doing that?
Yeah,
my God.
Yeah, I'm traveling around to these different bases teaching senior NCOs this leadership course.
Well, that road should be paved right to chief with all this now, right?
Yeah, it's so. But again, it's just really, I'm gone now from the home and the family, and it's really starting to struggle and being hard on my wife and the kids.
How old was your youngest kid at this time?
5. Oh. Yeah, my youngest was born. In fact, my youngest was born in 2014, my first day in the reserve in A-SWIFT. My first UTA, I missed my first UTA weekend.
Because you're in the hospital.
Because I'm in the hospital. Yeah.
Oh man.
In fact, not to get too side distracted, but that transfer from going active duty to the reserve, the reservist or whoever at Air Force Reserve Personnel Center didn't pick me up because it was like a Friday to Saturday, Sunday. They didn't do it that Friday afternoon. So I technically wasn't even in the reserve that weekend. So when my daughter's being born at the hospital, I wasn't even on orders. It was a major headache crossing over to the reserve because,
was this under, did you do this through like Palace? What was it? Palace Front?
So I did,
Palace Front was 1 day active, next day reserve, right?
I did Palace Front.
Palace Chase was you had to deal with some, I'm training the rest of my active duty time for reserve time or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I can't remember it exactly.
Yeah. And I crossed straight over. So there really should be, should have been no break in orders.
Seamless. Right.
But this guy at the Air Force Reserve Personnel Center decided not to process the paperwork that Friday. And, yeah. And so
you're technically AWOL, or were you out of the military?
I was technically out of the military and without coverage.
Yeah.
And with the kid, with the baby in the hospital,
that is insane.
Yeah. Anyway, so back to 2019. She's now 5 years old. She's my youngest. My oldest is 19. My youngest is 5.
Well, between UTAs and going off and teaching these courses on the weekends, you're really gone. You're gone a lot.
I am. It was tough. It was really hard on my wife, hard on the kids. Even hard on me. I mean, I started just stressing all the time. In fact, in 2019, I also now start to pick up and I try to I enroll in a PhD program.
Come on, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did your wife ever tug you at the elbow and go, "Hey, I need some help over here," right?
Well, she does. In the next year in 2020.
Yeah.
Now it's COVID.
Oh, yeah. That's
so
right.
now I'm trying to run a unit from home. From my
kids are home.
Right? The kids are home. I'm teaching my kindergartner from the kitchen. My office, which is not a good idea, but my office is in my bedroom. So I'm sleeping, getting out of bed and going to my desk, running a unit,
wow.
And all this. And it's too much. And so I quit. I took 2 classes for my PhD.
Yeah.
The first class I got an 89% and I got put on academic probation. And I'm
damn.
And I'm like,
for 89%?
89% is a pretty good percentage, but no, that's too low. And so the next class I got 94. And so I knew I was capable.
Yeah.
But
could you make that effort?
I was it's not worth the effort. My family's more important. So I dropped out of the PhD program.
What did you get your master's in?
It was through AMU, American Military University.
All right.
The space studies,
nice.
With a focus in planetary science.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. So
good thing you were reserve and you weren't moving anywhere. Can you imagine that?
Yeah. So my wife does tell me it was mid 2020 when she's like, "Hey, this isn't working. You're gone all the time. And even when you're here, you're gone. You're on the phone working all this, all the time."
Could you see it?
I could feel it. I didn't know it until people Juan Lopez and people were pointing it out, but I was having panic attacks.
Oh, well,
I was just
it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming.
I wear an Apple Watch now that monitors my heart rate, but I was on a bike one time at the gym later on, and I started to have that feeling of I was having basically kind of a panic attack, but on the bike. But it was kind of exercise induced. And I looked at my heart rate, and it was 185, almost 190.
Oh man!
And yet it was the same feeling that I was having at my desk as a squadron superintendent, managing all this stuff.
Yeah.
People's lives and stuff, having to financial issues, personal issues, personal. Right. I mean, and that was happening to me every time. My heart rate was doing that. I was having these panic attacks, and just sweating, and people would walk in and be like, "Are you okay?" Like, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Why? What's up?" And they're like, "You look like you don't look okay." You know?
Right.
Um,
So it was a bit hard to see it from you, right? At least where you were.
yeah, I mean, it took people saying things and
Yeah.
pointing it out to me.
Yeah.
You know, people like my wife, people like Juan Lopez, and saying like, "Dude, like, you don't look right, man. Like, you know, it's not normal."
Yeah. Yeah. I salute you for trying to make everything happen, but you didn't even realize what toll it was taking on you, your family, your health.
Right.
That's crazy. So, how long did that go? How long did that tornado of busyness carry on for before you kind of was like, okay, let me wave some flags here?
So it
bail out of this
was
thing?
specifically, I think the final straw was July of 2020, and it was so I'm a squadron superintendent. I'm a senior master sergeant, and a new wing command chief comes in, and this new wing command chief is very pro Chiefs Club, just like, and I'm starting to now get exposed to the chief politics of stuff, and she makes it very clear to me. She's like, "You are not a chief, and you are a senior master sergeant, and you are the last of your kind." That's a quote. And I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" She goes,
"What does that mean?"
She says, "After you leave this position, I'm never going to have another senior master sergeant be a squadron soup. They're all going to be chiefs," because she was very pro chief. I'm like, okay.
She's just going to change the manning, the personnel to do that?
No, they did. So they do. This is part of what kind of got me out was they said my billet got converted. Because here's the other thing. My squadron, let me back up. When I took over Force Swiss, through working with the local recruiters. I mean, I was in the recruiter's office weekly. My group commander gave me one standing order. He said, "Grow the unit."
Right. That's how it's always been. Yeah.
Right. So I had for over a 2.5-year period, I had a net growth of 33%.
That's amazing.
We went so now, but when I finally get out in like 2021, our unit has 110 people.
Wow, that's wonderful, man. Well done.
But
so then it justifies a chief. Yeah.
Yes. Once you get over 100, it justifies a chief.
Right.
And she didn't want me promoting in place, and so she was going to have me do the swap around and whatnot. And she basically was like, "You need to move and go be a chief." But remember what I just told you? I have all this family drama, just like stress and stuff. Yeah. And they're telling me basically say, pick a chief position at Vandenberg, Colorado Springs, somewhere, pick one. And I tell them, no, like I can't move anymore. I can't do this to them.
Good for you. Yeah.
And so they basically like, well, you need to get out. Like you need to go do something because you're soaking up this position. It's supposed to be for a chief. I'm not promoting you. Like you got to go someplace and do this. And then, so now I'm not playing this game. So I'm starting to ruffle feathers with the wing command chief, and which didn't bother me personally until it affects my troops, which has started to affect my troops.
Yeah.
And I had been working with one of my master sergeant troops, grooming her, getting her ready, checking the boxes, and I wanted to get her stratified at the wing.
Okay.
In the top 10%.
Right.
And it happens the same time every year, and it's kind of in the back of my mind, like, when is this meeting happening to go do the stratification?
You got to argue for your people. Right.
And I get a phone call from the 8th Swiss Squadron Soup, Carlos Martinez. He calls me on my phone. He says, "Hey, Kev, we're having this meeting right now, and you're not here. And there's no Force Swiss representation."
What?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
And, well, I'm not a chief. And the wing command chiefs, they're the chairman of this meeting, only invited the chiefs. But at the cost of not having a representation of my unit now. And the 8th Swiss chief Carlos Martinez, he's like, "Dude, there's a phone right here in the middle of this table. This is the number. You need to dial in.
Good.
When it comes time to speak up."
Yeah.
And I said, thank you, man. So I do. I dial in and I listen and I wait until it's time for Force Swiss. And they say, "Okay, this master sergeant, and she goes, the command chief goes, does anybody know this person, Master Sergeant, so and so, and I speak up on the phone. I'm like, yes, this is Senior Master Sergeant Kevin Reed, Squadron Superintendent of 4 Swiss. That's my troop.
Yeah.
She cuts me off. She cuts me off and says, I'll get to you in a minute, Sergeant Reed.
Oh my
Does anybody else here know this person? Anybody here? Any of you chiefs know? And she goes around the room one by one, asking all the chiefs, do you know this person? Do you know this person? And do you remember Willie?
Yeah, sure.
Williams, another awesome dude. He speaks up and he's like, ma'am, the only person that can adequately speak to this troop is her squadron superintendent. And that's Senior Master Sergeant Kevin Reed. He's on the phone right now.
Good for him.
And yeah. And so she goes, okay, what do you got, Sergeant Reed? And at this moment, I want to force choke her.
Yeah.
Phone.
Absolutely.
But it's not about me.
Right.
It's about her. It's about my troop.
Yeah.
I just swallow it and I give the best I can to just advocate for her. Yeah. And she got it. She got stratified.
Did she really? Well done, man.
Yeah. So that's probably one of my most proudest moments was being a leader, taking care of people.
Yeah. And
just pushing all the way through, putting your ego aside, swallowing and just doing what's best for that person and seeing it come to fruition and seeing them get in. That's both the best. But it also was the straw that broke the camel's back because as soon as I got off that phone call, I applied for retirement.
Yeah. Yeah. You're already at 20, right?
Or
21 or something like that.
So at this point I was at, I had just over 20 and I retired right at 22.
Yeah.
But because I knew
you're not going to make headway,
right.
She's got your number. You're not going to miraculously turn her around. Yeah, I got you. Golly, man, that's amazing. That's interesting. So, tell me, I don't want to short shift you here, but tell me about your retirement. What'd you do?
So like the ceremony type thing? Or,
sure.
I mean, again, it was COVID time. So the military was
right.
like, well, we can't, they were doing like virtual stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
And, but they weren't allowing like gatherings, and stuff like that. And then, and I'm like, well, I'm going to do one off base. And they're like, well, you're not allowed to do it off base. And I'm like, well, you're not really in a position to tell me no.
Why couldn't you do it off base?
Well, because they were saying you're still like putting people at risk, but I ended up doing it at my home, like in my my living room. And it was actually awesome because I was able to just hand select just a few people from my career to be present, and be with my family and stuff. And it was actually like it was awesome.
That's ideal. Yeah. Then you give a shit about that. You don't have to put on airs. You don't have to be someone you're not.
Yeah.
And that was, what was the date? So
I retired. The ceremony was March of 21, but my actual discharge date, because I had, you got some days, I actually discharged June 1st of 21.
Oh, man. Wow. That's remarkable. That's really cool. I mean, especially for a space guy. I mean, it's interesting all the way through, right? I mean, I talked to Teapot. Teapot's boring. No, I'm just kidding. He was a good story too. But interesting insights all the way through there. What would you, I mean, besides that, that Master Sergeant was the proudest moment. That's an excellent one to choose, right? Because you're doing something for someone else and you saw the fruition of that.
And I was, I mean, and and it was something that I cared about. And it was about someone else. Yeah. And I got to see the fruition of it. Yeah. And see her get really what she deserved anyways. That's what it was all about. It was kind of like she put in the work. I just laid it out and said, hey, these are the boxes. I'll knock, kick in any doors I can to help make it, but so I did enjoy, I enjoyed it. That was very satisfying, but super stressful, man. But it was good.
And it's also comforting to know, or it's not comforting. It's satisfying to know that you and your wife made it through that period of time. I assume your kids are good. It wasn't a broken. It didn't adversely affect you guys. I hope. Maybe it did. But you're still together. You're still raising a family. I mean, there's a lot of stories where it's like, yeah, that kind of tore us apart, or that was close to tearing us apart.
Well, I mean, and it was. I mean, it was close several times.
Yeah.
But and that's why I'm just a big advocate. Like whenever I tell people, acknowledge the spouses. I mean,
right.
I mean, all the time. I mean, people, it's always about the
Absolutely.
veteran and this kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, and what about the spouse? So what were they doing? And they're like, they're kind of taking off on it. And I'm like, and you find out these stories where it's like these spouses are interrupting their own careers sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And stuff.
Yeah.
Certifications don't transfer state to state, or they're picking up the kids, moving them around and stuff. So
right. I got that explained to me. We did a story about spouses not finding work, and it's the way they pitched it. I was like, what do you mean they can't find work? They can find work. But then somebody explained what that really meant, and I was like, oh, they should have written the story that way, because that makes a lot of sense. And they can't move up in the company because they know they're not going to be there after a couple of years. And so I was like, oh yeah, that's really terrible. So good on your wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I've given you the whole time to think about it. Give me your best ass chewing. Who chewed your ass the best?
So I think my first ass chewing, which might have been the best one, but it was actually in tech school as an airman.
Okay.
On my birthday, or at least my birthday weekend while I'm out. So at this point in time, I'm like, it's my 19th birthday, and I'm at tech school, and I've been there, and I've been in the military for like 6 months.
Yeah.
And we're getting our rooms being inspected. Typical Friday inspection. And the military training leader comes through and he's going through. My room is awesome, Yeah. And he goes through my desk and he opens the desk drawer and he's like, what is this? And I'm like, gosh, what is it? Like, what could it be? Somebody put something in there. And he's like, you got like 75 cents in here. That's a security violation. You have too much money unsecured in this drawer. You're only allowed to have 50 cents or something.
They're fishing for something. Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I have this moment, and this is moments where you have life's full of choices.
Yeah. Right.
And at that moment I chose to say, why don't you go buy yourself a candy bar?
Look at the balls on this 19-year-old.
Which is uncharacteristic of me. Like, I just...
Yeah. Were you surprised you said it? Did you surprise yourself?
I actually was kind of surprised it came out of my mouth. But I was kind of... The rationale was, well, if you just bought yourself a candy bar, I would be under the limit. There'd be no violation, and you'd get some Snickers. He did not find that funny. He was so pissed that it wasn't just enough to get the ass chewing.
Yeah.
He then told me, you now have stairwell duty all weekend. And I'm like, what's that? Because that position didn't exist. He made it up on the spot.
That's good. That's
and
really good.
How it was in our building, there was first floor, second floor, third floor.
Yeah.
And my job all Friday night and all Saturday night was to sit and be in the stairwell and monitor the people coming through the stairwell.
Oh, that's so good.
All night. And I was finally off duty from stairwell duty.
Yeah.
Sunday morning, which is now my birthday. And Vandenberg's only 2 hours away from Thousand Oaks. Yeah. So my family has this party, my 19th birthday party scheduled for me Sunday. That I was supposed to be there all weekend, but now I'm like, I told them, well, I can only be there Sunday,
Yeah.
No sleep. I'm tired, but I'm off stairwell duty. Yeah. And then I get in my truck and I drive home and I'm speeding. Speeding. Man. You're tired. Hazard.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm a hazard. I'm speeding through Santa Barbara County.
Oh shit.
Which you don't do because there's cops.
Yeah.
And I get pulled over. I'm doing like
Sunday morning.
Sunday morning, and I'm going through Santa Barbara County, and I'm doing like 85, 90 in a 65.
Oh no!
So I'm doing over 20, and I get pulled over by a cop, and second ass chewing that weekend. That cop is so pissed. He's like giving me the whole, you could kill yourself, blah, blah, blah. This is so, all this stuff. So I'm getting a second ass chewing this weekend now. But he's kind enough that he drops it. He says I was only doing an 84 in the 65, which is 19 over. So he doesn't take my license.
That was nice.
That was nice. But
wow. Worst day ever.
So 19-year-old me got a lot of ass chewing at least that weekend.
That's a good story. That's a really good story. But see, it's those stories that link us all, because we've all had that. Yeah. Stairwell duty. I've never heard of that one. That's awesome.
Well, and it probably never existed at any time after that.
No, but that's so creative. That's so creative. Yeah. Did we get it all? Anything we missed?
Yeah, I mean.
Anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I mean, so I still work as a contractor now in the same environment, a lot around doing the same job, but I wear civilian clothes.
Yeah.
And I still, people ask me, they're like, do you miss it? And my honest answer is no.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I'm just so much happier as a civilian.
Yeah, right.
On the outside.
Right.
However, the caveat is I'm still kind of in and amongst it. So my wife says, you really haven't experienced it yet. The true.
Yeah, being stripped away completely from it. Yeah, because you get to...
I look at it as like 1 foot kind of ish out the door. I mean, because I'm still around the military. I'm still kind of, mentoring these airmen guardians and stuff. I'm still getting that, that kind of like mission high of like when the, missiles are going off and stuff and participating in doing that. So I'm getting that kind of job satisfaction. But eventually I'm really going to have to leave and walk away, and I won't have that. And I feel like there will be a day where I do really miss the mission high and the camaraderie.
Sure. Stuff. Sure. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool that you're still able to do that and still talk to some of the young airmen.
Yeah.
Who I think now more than ever need as much guidance as they can get, So I'm not saying that they're low quality. I'm just saying, I don't know, switching over to the Space Force, how much NCO guidance is being pushed, like I don't know how they're structured.
No, they are really anemic when it comes to, especially senior NCOs. Senior NCOs are like unicorns.
Oh, God.
I mean,
I think I was out there on the ops floor one time, and everyone, with the exception of one person, was like E6 and below. And I was like, where's all that's it? That's the highest. Most of them are E5 and below. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So
yeah,
well, at least you're there. They can still come to you if they come to Father Reed and get the good advice. You know what I mean? So
I think that's it. I mean,
well, hats off to you for crafting a career like that with the kids and with your wife, most importantly, right?
Yeah. Sure.
And still making it pretty much close to the summit. I don't know if I don't know if it's all cracked up to be a chief or not, but I think you did very well. And
I would say for that, I feel part of it. I would say I wish I had just gone out at 20 as a master.
Maybe.
But I am still proud, and I wouldn't have been able to advocate for that troop to get master sergeant stratification at the wing.
Might have been all maybe that's the only reason that you were extended.
But another thing too is I don't think I would have been happy or satisfied as a chief either, because it would have just taken me away from the squadron level.
Yeah,
with the people that I care about, that would have been like an administrative paper pusher of some type, something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm impressed. I think it's a hell of a career. and it's, thanks for telling your story, man. It's been an honor to talk with you about it.
I appreciate you doing what you do with this and giving us an opportunity. I mean, because honestly, this is the most talking I've done in a long time. I'm really a listener. My wife, my wife says everyone just says I'm usually one that sits back and asks questions and lets people talk and stuff. So it's kind of rare that I'm actually the one talking.
Good.
So,
that's my job. I'm here for you to bring that out. So your youngest can go, oh, Dad went in the reserves when I was born. And he was devoid of health care. That's a great story. Yeah. Senior Master Sergeant Kevin Reed. Thanks, man. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Marty. Yeah, this has been a blast.
Yeah. On behalf of Senior Master Sergeant Reed, I'd like to thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please leave a like and a comment and share the podcast with someone else. And as always, make sure to download the next episode for more service origin stories. So until next time, on your feet, dismiss!